You are the host. So Nathan, you have to read. Okay. So thank you everyone for attending our, I think we're at 12 maybe or 13 sanctuary sessions that were kicked off by Rhonda again when COVID-19 was a new idea. Not only was it a novel virus, but it was a new way of a new challenge that we hadn't experienced before. And now COVID-19 has been with us along with so many other things, racial injustice, environmental injustice that we've known all along, but combined with everything, life has become extremely difficult for a host of people and extremely difficult to manage on a day-to-day basis. And so we wanted to revisit with Rhonda, who has been an amazing guide, amazing, she's an amazing artist and healer, and she's been amazing working with 6018 North. We're an organization nonprofit organization on 6018 North Kenmore in Edgewater, and we have a show that's up right now called Windows to the World, which is addressing the confluence of racial inequity, COVID-19, systemic inequality, and what are a host of messes that artists seem to be the keys to addressing. So we've again turned to Rhonda to help us address how to work through some of these issues. So I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda, and thank you again for Rhonda joining us and everyone else.
Yes. Hey, everybody. I just wanted to start off with an introduction. I know quite a few names I see in the room. And for anyone who I haven't met and don't know yet, I'm a visual artist. And I started making sculptures and installations about healing, transformation, and metaphysical topics in 2015. And I didn't feel it was good enough for me. It wasn't enough to just put a sculpture on a pedestal and say, yeah, that's about healing. I felt like I had to get in front of people, had to connect directly with people and bring some of what I know. So that's why I started doing workshops with my exhibition. So anytime I had an exhibition, I looked for an opportunity to put a workshop with it. And now 5 years later, I've been doing workshops consistently, even more than the exhibitions. I just did one with the University of Chicago, and with COVID, I did one with Creative Capital, which was national. And I just had to quickly reframe everything I already talked about in the context of people being on lockdown all of a sudden and being in panic and all their issues being magnified, the issues that were already there being bigger, and how do we deal with panic? How do we deal with the lack of communication and being able to get in front of people? And I just want to say that even though we're not in person and it's a little bit tougher to connect with people over the internet, I'm grateful that we have Zoom. I'm really grateful that I can still be in touch with people at all. So you'll never find me complaining about this online format because I'm very grateful that it's here. So let's just jump right into journaling. Some of you weren't here yet when I asked if people could put into the chat any questions you had. I do have like the basic beginner overview, which I think at any level you might be able to jump in. This is designed to help people who are just starting a journaling practice or people who may want to jumpstart a journaling practice. And I have 2 hours worth of stuff to talk about. I have 8 weeks of stuff to talk about. So if you put something in the chat, that can help us make sure we meet whatever needs you might be interested in today. So until I see someone with a special request, I'm just going to jump right in. And just note that if you do want to make a comment, I am totally open to people jumping in. We do only have an hour, but if you want to say something, just unmute. But after you finish making a comment, make sure you push the mute button again, just so that we can all hear properly. And I do have a fan running. If that's getting in anyone's way of hearing me properly, please do let me know in the chat and I'll turn it off. And I'm willing to take one for the team and suffer in the heat so that you all can hear. But don't hesitate to let me know if you're having a problem hearing. Okay, so let me get started. I'd just like to put out there I feel like the purpose of journaling is more than, it can just be to document your life. It's like a way of saying, you know what, my life is important enough, I value myself enough to document my life. You can look at it as, okay, dear diary style, captain's log, here's what happened today. I burnt the toast, I stubbed my toe, a rainbow came out. But you can also use it for so many other reasons, like processing experiences, working through anger and disappointment, brainstorming creative or entrepreneurial projects, or envisioning a future goal or future life that you would like to live, or in other words, manifesting. So I do entire workshops on manifesting, and journaling is a big part of that. And then I often talk about using a journal to manifest. I teach an artful journaling class, so a journal doesn't always have to be text-based. There are times when you might not have words for how you feel, but you need to work through the energy. And just by grabbing some instrument, it could be a pencil, a colored pencil, a marker, an oil pastel, and starting to make marks on the page can start to move through energy. You move energy. If you ever feel a lot of anger and you just move, you're grounding that out. And sometimes art does it, sometimes words do it, sometimes screaming does it, punching bags do it, but moving the ideas out is one thing. But if you don't even have words, just making marks on a page can help a lot. And you start to notice things dissipate. Just like when you see ducks in a pond, if you ever observe them, how they'll have a little scuffle, they might fight over a piece of bread, and 2 minutes later or 2 seconds later, they're shaking it off and they're back in their peace. How can we shake it off and get back in our peace? Journaling is part of that for me. So that's a quick overview of the purpose. Now, for formats, a lot of people get caught up in what kind of journal they should use and how they should journal. And I like to help people break free of limitations so that they're not thinking, am I doing this right? And rather they're thinking, what's the best way for me? So a lot of people go to the store and they find those leather-bound, beautiful books with lines in them, and then they never write in them because they're so beautiful and precious, or they write a couple of times and maybe 2 years later they want to start up again, but then, oh, I don't want to use that book because it's, people put so many limitations around how to journal, and those things just block us from creating a consistent practice. And speaking of practices, I didn't really know how to answer the question a few years ago when I was asked, how do I make myself start journaling? How do I push myself or build the habit? Because I have been journaling consistently since I was a little kid. I might have been in 5th grade, and my first journal, I still have it. It was a stack of pieces of notebook paper that I stapled together and wrote "Top Secret" on the front. And that was my first journal. So it has been a habit for me. And maybe I might go some time without journaling, but and I just journal when I need to. And when I found myself telling people, oh, you don't have to think of journaling as a chore, just journal when you need to. But that wasn't enough for people who hadn't yet developed the habit. So I started thinking of ways to develop the habit. First of all, one of the best ways to make journaling feel like a chore is to think there's some right way to do it. But if we expand our idea of what can be a journal, you can get a notebook from the dollar store. It could be a sketchbook with no lines. So that means your text can be as big or small as you want. It could be a binder so that you're removing and replacing sheets. You can use plastic protected sheets and put artwork in it. You can move pages around. You could use a computer. I mean, I don't even use I don't even use a notebook anymore for most of my journaling. I do on the computer, and what's good about that is I can go back and look things up using a find search and find, and I can find lots of information. I can easily look back and find what I'm looking for, whereas I might have to go back through books, multiple books, to find something and page through every page, rather than electronically saying, let me look up this institution's name so I can look up the last time I went there, or such and so and so. Some people actually hate writing, and I do think there might be some trauma around getting red marks on our papers in school, and so they feel they don't want to journal because of the stigma against writing and being wrong and having all those red marks on school papers. So I might say we could work on healing that, but for people who just really aren't interested in writing, video recordings of themselves might be good journals. You can just sit in front of any kind of video app and record yourself talking to yourself and play it back later. And audio recordings are another option, especially if you're on the go and you want to remember things. Because I don't think journals are just about saying, recording what you've done in a day or documenting what's been done. It's also about documenting your ideas. And it's different from a to-do list. It's different from a brainstorming list when you put it in the context of a journal, because you're putting it in with everything else that's going on with you. So when you make a to-do list in the context of a journal, you might be talking about how you feel, what else is going on in your day. You might feel some self-doubt come up around that thing, and you can work through it all in the same place. If we have a to-do list, we often don't write our self-doubts, or we don't try to problem solve the way we're feeling around that to-do list. But if we put all of that in the context of the journal, we end up doing a lot more work. We can work through a lot more issues. And then there's the issue of writing by hand versus typing. And if we're trying to feel our way around, say you're somebody who really prefers typing because your thoughts move so fast, but you're forcing yourself to think, oh, but journaling has to be done on paper with a pencil or a pen. That's another way that people might limit themselves. If you really want to type, go ahead and use that. And if you want your journal to be on paper, something that where you can turn pages, you can always print something out, or you can make a beautiful, artful journal with drawings in it, collage elements in it, and you can extract some of your epiphanies and your top ideas from that typed out journal, where you're really just pouring out just a brain dump of everything that's going on. And you can extract from that some of the takeaways, the key takeaways from your week or from your day, and put them in a beautiful art book that becomes a different type of journal. And really, I just recommend that anyone who feels constricted by what they think journaling is, find a way to expand it. In my 8-week class on journaling, I even talk about putting your journal entry pages on the wall, because sometimes if you're trying to work through something, it can be helpful to look at multiple pages at one time. When you have a book, you can only look at 2 pages or 1 page at a time. But what if you had all the pages on a wall and you're working through something? Whether you're planning a future or trying to figure out past patterns to understand yourself better today. So basically, whatever it is, give yourself room, give yourself the journaling practice that fits who you are and what you need. And I don't hear any sounds when people add anything to the chat. So I just want to see, I'm just going to take a moment just to see if anyone has written anything. Okay, Terrence, thank you for letting me know you didn't hear the fan. Oh, I see Gina starting a food journal. You know, I don't think I have any specifics on a food journal, but maybe I'll come back to that, because I think it could be as simple as, well, one tip I might have is, if you feel certain cravings, write down how you feel, what you're thinking about when you get those food cravings, because that's often the key to why you're getting. You might notice a pattern, and when you're able to look back at things happening over time, you can notice, oh, every time I wanted chocolate cake, I was feeling nervous about work, or I started to always want to eat grapes when I started thinking healthy thoughts about, whatever. Just notice what the patterns are when you want to eat certain things, or when you feel cravings. What are your thoughts in those moments? That might be a good thing to do. Add your thoughts around eating times. That's the one thought that comes to mind. But just as we go, Gina, and by the way, Gina is a good friend of mine. I just want to say, and I'm really happy you're here. And
Can you hear me?
Hey, Gina,
Can
not
you
to
hear me?
embarrass you, but yes, I can hear you. Hey, Gina.
Hi.
Were
Hold
you
on,
going to
let me
say
take
something?
Yeah, I
Oh,
wanted to, I'm trying to fix I have wireless headphones, so they may sound funny. It sounds funny to me. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, with the food journaling, because I think my eating is attached to my emotions. I'm an emotional eater. I'm wondering how the journal, as I progress, because it would be something new for me. And I was thinking of adding pictures. Do I add pictures, in your suggestion? Do I add pictures of what I'm eating, or the things that I should be eating?
The things
If you
that you
get what I
should,
mean.
are you saying the things that you should be eating or the things that you
Yes,
are?
like that I am eating. Like when I'm emotional, as I'm doing the food journal specifically because I want to lose weight and I want to remind myself of the healthy things, but I want to take a look at what I'm just, let's just say for a week, and I'm eating whatever I pick up to eat, and I put that in my journal. But to progress, not as I progress, but to progress better, should I on a daily put in the journal, even though I'm writing, but if I want to add photos or just sketch whatever, should I definitely just put in what I'm eating, or should I add the things I should be eating? Like if I say to myself, oh my gosh, I ate that chicken sandwich and I really should have had a salad. Should I put a photo of the salad in my journal, or just write the word salad all over the journal? It's kind
You
of like
know,
one of those.
I think it really depends on how you respond to those things. I don't know that you should be beating yourself up like should. Does that really
Mhm.
work? And you know, you might want to try it out and try the first thing that makes sense to you and ask yourself over time, is this working? Am I beating myself
Okay.
up? Am I battering myself? Do I need to look at do I need to look at pictures of the foods that that I'm trying to stop eating? Is that reinforcing or making me want to eat those foods even more? And do I want to make this into an inspiration journal? And it sounds like you might be going on a journey, and the first part might be, let me try to understand why I'm eating the things I am eating, and
Mhm.
what are the specific emotions, and then start working on those emotions. And then maybe later you can turn into inspiration. But I think you have to start and make sure you're not the biggest thing I would say is, it might not matter what pictures you put down, but if you see yourself judging yourself and being too harsh on yourself, that might be something you want to observe. And I think in the beginning, just observe yourself, trust yourself too. So that's
Okay.
another thing too. You know, you might not have to come to someone else to find out how to do it, but just take the first instinct and do it. And if it ends up not working for you, that's how you get your answer. That doesn't mean, oh, I was wrong the first way I did it. No, this is how you figure out the best way to do it. And the best thing to do is going to change as you make progress. So the thing you might do in month 1, you might grow into a whole new phase in month 2. Your needs will change. So you should just observe yourself, but try to not, I mean, the only advice I have is don't judge yourself and don't beat yourself up. And if putting pictures of the food you ate is like beating yourself up, I would say you might not want to do that. And it might even reinforce, or it could be a reverse psychology thing where you start to look at that food and realize how much you don't need it. There could be so many different things you're doing, but I think you have to study yourself. And the biggest thing that a journal does for us is it helps us study ourselves. So that's why maybe
Mhm.
someone outside of you shouldn't even answer that question, because just jumping in, diving in, and starting somewhere will help you figure out the best approach. And that approach will change as you grow, as you progress. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Thank
And
you.
you know we're friends, so we could talk about this more later.
Sure.
Yes. And Terrence asked, now there are journaling apps, but because I'm just this freestyle person, I haven't done that research. But if you Google, I mean, there are a lot of people who are real flippant who say, oh, use Google. But I think instead of just saying Google online apps, I would say make sure you read reviews about them, because there are a lot of people out there who write really good reviews. And if you read the reviews and see what's the kind of person, if the people are talking about the types of needs they have for a journal, you might get some real clues as to whether or not a certain journaling app works for you. I have zero experience with journaling apps. I do have some books about journaling that I would like to talk to. I would like to speak about at some point. So let me see. And Maria said, took your tip from last time and journaled about a dream I remembered from the other day. I even shared it with my husband since through journaling. I didn't know if you wanted me to read that out loud. Sorry if you didn't. Journaling for a creative practice. Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going with folks who want to just ways to get yourself into the practice of journaling. I have a few more notes there, and then I'll get to the creative practice. And if I miss something, just jump in and let me know. So for people who are trying to develop a practice, some of the things you can do. Now, a lot of people feel like this is a chore and they have to push themselves to do it. How can you create journaling as this thing that you get to do, not this thing you have to do, something that you feel pulled into, not that you have to push yourself into? Number one, you can create a space where you do your journaling and give that space some ambience. Put some of your favorite things there, a nice cloth, maybe some crystals and some incense, and have some ambience with the nice music. Maybe even create a ritual around journaling, like your favorite cup of tea, or again, music, and or meditate before you journal. Or do some chanting, or there are a number of different things, but things that you love to do, things that you are going to look forward to. Then for those who don't ever give themselves the time, one thing you could do is set aside a specific day, and it could be just starting off with 1 day a week, a specific length of time. And if you give yourself 10 minutes, 1 day a week, that's going to be really easy to meet, and it's not that demanding. But I bet you when you sit down that 1 day for 10 minutes in that 1 week, you might go 20 minutes. So it's easy. It's like an easy goal. So if you give yourself easy goals, it's easy to exceed them. And then before you know it, it's easy to do a half hour. It's easy to do 45 minutes. And then when you do have a habit, then you can journal when you need to. And you might say, you know, I'm just giving myself 20 minutes and I'm going to stop, but I really want to get back to this writing. So maybe that'll help me write tomorrow. So you might add more than 1 day. And I would just say, don't pressure yourself to do too much. The more you start off with a little bit, it's just you're chipping away at the whatever stubbornness there is, whatever resistance there is to journaling. You're chipping away at it gradually by making it so easy to get in there. And then you can add time if you feel necessary. And then if you don't know where to start with writing, some people want to start a journaling practice because they know how valuable it is, but have no idea where to start. I do have some journaling prompts that I can share today, but having something to write about, if you don't just feel that, you know, your everyday experiences are something you want to sit up and write about. And sometimes you might not want to write every day, but if you do the once a week thing, you can sum up your whole week. You don't have to feel like this is something you have to do every day. I definitely recommend writing down your dreams, because if you are studying yourself, looking at how your dreams are complementing your everyday experiences, it can be helpful. Sometimes our dreams have messages, and sometimes it takes a while to understand the language of our individual dreams and how our dreams try to communicate with us. And sometimes if you have a creative project, looking at your dreams can give you answers. I have solved many a creative problem by just letting go, going to sleep, and the dream solves the issue. So yes, taking a look at dreams and writing them in the same journal. And that's another issue. A lot of people get caught up in wanting to have separate journals for different topics. So I might hear people talk about having a gratitude journal over here, and a day-to-day life journal here, and a brainstorming and a dream journal. I think you want to do what's comfortable for you, but I definitely recommend, it's very helpful to have your dream journal and your daily life journal together, because if you go back and read the dream journal, you're going to wonder, well, what was going on in my life when I had that dream? So being able to write the dreams that you're having right amongst the everyday living experiences that you're having, that's important. So your dreams are part of your everyday life. And you can also do a separate gratitude journal, but you can also have a segment of your journaling. Maybe you even kick off your journaling habit every day, or every other day, every week, by talking about the things you're grateful for. Sometimes people don't get started because they don't know what to write about, but that's a prompt. What are you grateful for today? And you don't have to think of only the huge things that you're grateful for. You can think of the little things that people take for granted. I am breathing right now. I have running water. Those kinds of things that people tend to, at least in this country, a lot of us tend to think about, or take for granted and not think about.
Rhonda, I was kind of wondering, like, I know for me, I feel like I have dreams so often that recording them feels like recording snowflakes.
Mm.
You know, it's just like, if it's snowing outside, you don't even bother. So do you have any advice, or like same with ideas, right? Like, at what point do you go live your life rather than keep a record of it, or how do you make a ratio between those two?
I don't necessarily know how to answer that question when it comes to dreams, because if if you end up having so many dreams that it takes half a day to write them down, that, you know, that's one thing. But when it comes to living your life versus writing about it, there might be times where you're going through something and there's an intense amount of growth happening in your life, and you might spend a lot more time journaling at that time because you're doing tons of processing, and you might heal faster. You might go through a faster transformation because the realizations and the epiphanies will come to you through the journaling process. So it might just be a decision that you make based on when it is. Some people could use journaling as an escape. So it could be something that people can overuse and overdo, but it really takes discernment, and a person has to step back and say, wow, I think I might be overdoing this. I think I have to get out in the world and live. And especially if a person spends more time talking about the past than the present, if you're not talking about things that are currently happening in the world, in your life, then that might be a sign that you're spending too much time dwelling in the past. So it might not just be that you're spending too much time journaling, but what are you journaling about and why? So I think all of those things come into play. Does that make sense, Rebecca? And then when it comes to dreams, there might be periods of time where you're having a lot of active dreams because there are messages for you. And I also talk about how when you first wake up from certain dreams, sometimes there's a part of you that knows this is an important dream that you need to write down. And sometimes there's a part of you knows that's a dream I could just cast off to the side. And maybe you might need a quick footnotey way to write dreams down so that you don't spend a ton of time analyzing. And that's the thing, are you spending time over analyzing, or are you spending too much time capturing the details? Because there is a way to quickly write them down and contemplate a little bit and then step away if you feel it's too much time. And then those dreams might make sense later. That's another thing. So because we're on the topic of dreams, I will note that I have found that it's a great thing that I've written dreams down, because I do go back and read my journals, and I might read something I wrote 5 years ago, and I'll notice that I wrote down something that came true. So sometimes we actually do dream of the future. If you believe that time is an illusion, that's one of the bits of evidence of it. I've dreamt of the future numerous times, but I wouldn't know that if I hadn't written the dreams down. My conscious memory is not carrying those dreams with me. So when I go back to these old journal entries, I see, wow. And one other fascinating thing is that one of those dreams that came true, when I wrote it down that morning, I actually had a sense that it was a dream of the future. I wrote down, this felt like the future. So that's how I started to understand that there's a part of me that has answers. And that part of me is usually most active first thing in the morning when I'm in that liminal space between sleeping and waking. So that's another thing. If you keep a notebook in the bed, it's not only your dreams, but those first thoughts that you have at the beginning of the day that might be extremely valuable to record. Sometimes they might not make sense, but there are times when they're just on the verge, they're just in the middle enough where they make sense, and then they have something profound that's coming from other parts of ourselves. Even some ancient memories that we've long lost might come to the surface. So thank you for that, Rebecca. And let me get back up to some other things about journaling, some very important things. Like number one, while I don't like to have rigid rules, and I'm always talking about ways to break free of limitations, other than giving yourself room to write and be expansive, I always talk about privacy, because if a lot of people have talked to me about writing a journal that they might leave behind for someone. And when you're doing that, if in a way, I would think that maybe is this a journal if you're writing it for the purpose of giving it to someone else? It's like a long letter like people will talk about leaving journals to their children, giving them to their children. And I would just say, ask yourself, if you were writing for that person, or writing because you know someone's publicly going to consume it, are you truly being as honest with yourself as you can? Or are you saying things in a different way because you're writing for someone else? And if you know your journal is private, are you saying things to yourself that you feel comfortable saying to yourself? And one of the things that people say about journaling is avoid censoring yourself. And then if you feel yourself thinking, oh, I can't write that, I'm not saying force yourself to write anything, but the minute you find that there's something you don't feel comfortable saying, and it's just you and yourself, if you can't even say it to yourself, that's something to look at. Maybe make a note. Hey, I need to examine the reasons why I can't write this particular thing down. So I will, on one hand, try not to censor yourself, but if you feel this urge to censor yourself and you can't write something, that is something to look at. Why am I uncomfortable with this? It's something to explore. And you can do it when you're ready, because this is you and yourself. You don't have to force yourself to do anything. When you, like, so but sometimes we can't admit something to ourselves, or some people have shame around certain issues. And maybe another thing to think about is if you're in therapy or working with a professional, that could be some things that come up in your journal you can take to your next therapy session, or you can use the journal as a companion to therapy to come home and process the conversation on another level with yourself, or things that come up in your journal, you can take them to a session. And if there's something you can't admit or talk about with yourself, that might be something you can get someone to help you open up about, if you can even bring yourself to say it to them. So another reason that some people, I did notice that some people in my workshops I've noticed have talked about being afraid to journal. And so that's another obstacle that some people have, that they might be afraid of looking back at their negative experiences. Some people have talked about being afraid to look back at their mistakes and their failures. And I always say to that, number one, you don't have to reread everything you write down. And two, you don't have to keep everything you write down. Some things you write down in the moment when you're having a very tough, challenging moment. You have a lot of tough, challenging emotions to get out, and you get them out on the page, and you might decide to write something down in a separate place from your journal. It's an act of journaling, but you don't put it in your journal because maybe it's very toxic. And guess what? You can rip that up and throw it away. It's just about you moving the energy from inside your body, because guess what? If we don't move it, it stays in us and it gets lodged into different parts of our body, and it develops into other things. Like for some people, it could turn into disease. For other people, it could come out like a volcanic eruption, and they've ignored some feeling, and next thing they're yelling at someone that they really wouldn't want to yell at. And that brings me to another side topic, which is toxic positivity. Sometimes we think, oh my gosh, I'm feeling mad, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling rejected, but it's not good to feel those things because those are bad emotions. So yeah, I'm just going to not feel those things, and I'm just going to be positive. There are memes everywhere that say positive vibes only, and if you're not positive, stay away from me. And some people tend to take that a little bit too far and imply that you're not supposed to be angry, you're not supposed to get sad or upset or feel rejection. But guess what? We are human, and that is part of being human. And if you feel rejected, if you feel upset, you have every reason to have a tantrum, scream about it. I mean, not in the street maybe, not in public maybe, not at the grocery store, but in your bed, you might want to scream into the pillow. You might want to, kick and scream, whatever you might want to do, or turn to the journal page and write it down. And you might end up burning that in a safe place. But when you write something down, you will, next time you have an emotion that's really powerful and challenging and difficult, if you start writing it down instead of letting it go around and around in your head like in a circle. Say it was an argument with someone and you keep going over your head the things you could have said. I can't believe they said that. I should have said. If you start writing things down, it stops being this round and round circle, and you start making progress. You also will feel a lot of that anger leave your body. It is called moving energy. And we have to deal with our emotions. We have to confront them. And so what we want to do is we want to deal with those emotions, but not dwell on them. So when people talk about positive vibes, it doesn't mean, some people might mean, oh, you're never supposed to have anything negative. But the truth is, deal with the negative stuff when it comes up. Deal with our emotions. It's part of being human. Deal with them. Don't dwell on them. And if you start to find yourself developing a negative attitude, we might have a negative moment, we work through it, and it might take hours, it might take days, it might take weeks to work through something. I mean, grief, for instance, takes a very long time to work through. You might have fear around something, but it's like, don't ignore it. Don't try to cover it up. Don't try to repress it. Deal with it, confront it. And you might not be ready immediately, but just say, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to deal with it, and do your best to deal with it, confront it in a way that is compassionate. Be compassionate with yourself. Don't judge yourself. Work through it. But if you find yourself dwelling on something, that's when another level of work has to happen. That's when, if you dwell on something, it's not a negative moment, it becomes a negative attitude. And it's like you're putting on crap colored glasses. They talk about rose colored glasses. And then if you start to see the world through the lens of that negative experience, that's when it's becoming a problem, where you dwelled on something so much that it becomes part of your perspective. And that's what we don't have. That's what we don't want to happen. That's when you end up with a low vibration or negative vibration, because it's how you vibrate in the world. So I thought, I always think that's important to say, that some people feel like I'm bad because I'm having bad emotions. No, you just have to work through them. It's part of life. Everybody has them. And a lot of these people who pretend to be love and light all the time, they might be repressing some of their shadow energy. They might not be confronting the issues that they have. They might be in denial about some things. So again, you don't have to keep everything that you write down. You can destroy it by burning it. If you do it safely, you can rip it up, throw it away, and you can write it down separately from your regular journal. And then maybe when you get into a space where you're processing, you can write about it in a journal that you plan to keep. So that's that. But the most important thing with people who are afraid to journal is not that they need to get over the fear of looking back at past mistakes. It's not that they need to get past the fear of looking back at failure. They need to change their relationship to what a mistake is and what a failure is, and just realize you're judging yourself harshly. It's not that you're afraid of journaling. It's that you have made mistakes and failures into this horrible, horrible thing, when it's normal. It's a part of life. It means if you're making mistakes and if you're failing at something, that means you're actually stepping out in the world and trying things and doing things. So there's that. And I'm going to pause just to see if there are any questions. Okay. And so I just wanted to go back to Jessica. You're still here, right? Okay. You talked about journaling for creative practice, and since this is an arts organization, we want to talk about our artists. So did you have a more specific question, just so that I come at this from the right angle, Jessica? You can unmute if you would like to. Oh no, are you shaking your head no? Or are you writing? Okay. Oh, it's too loud where you are. Okay, got it. So I'll just start, and maybe you can join me in the chat if you like. So for creative people, no matter, and I think all kinds of things are creative, not just artists or any kind of artists, but also entrepreneurs need to be creative and innovative in their ideas. Business people of any type, creativity is a part of what we do. So if you're not an artist, don't think that this doesn't apply to you. Sometimes we need to be creative in how we live our lives. And I think for me, I have definitely used journaling to come to problem solve, to break through creative blocks, etc. And so the first thing is, as an artist, as a visual artist, I don't really sketch. When I'm interested in creating something, I start by writing about it. And I know that that might not work for everyone, but I'm a word person. I actually didn't go to art school. I went to school for writing. So writing is my default setting. And even though I was a baby when I started making art, writing is my default setting. And it might not be true for everyone. So I'll say this, I'll start from the point of, like, if someone's got a block and they want to write, but they don't know where to start, or you want to make a piece of art, you don't know where to start. Maybe you have a theme that you have to adhere to for a specific project, and you don't know where to start, or you feel a block. One thing that's important is a lot of people try to solve creative blocks by just sitting there and thinking their way through it. And a lot of times it's hard to move the energy. If a blockage is stuck, stagnant energy, what do we need to do? We need to break it up and move the energy. So sometimes moving your body can be one way. And so you could actually do some physical exercises, and that might get some things moving. I know that when you move your body, you exercise, you get more oxygen into the brain, and my brain always works better when it's oxygenated, when it got a little boost. But the other thing is, sometimes if you're blocked, the best thing to do is just to get your instruments in your hand and just have them in your hands and start doing something. One trick is to, if you're a writer, write something horrible. And because a lot of blocks stem from putting too much pressure on yourself to be perfect. Same thing when you're making something visual. The block could be coming from this immense pressure to make a certain thing. So making something intentionally ugly, set out to make something horrid, and you might fail to do so because it's kind of hard to do that when you're a creative person, but try. And then you can laugh at yourself, have a little fun, stop being so serious. All of those tactics can work. Be a 5-year-old kid. I made my first sculpture, and it's one of my best ones because I got into a 3-year-old mindset. I had a bunch of materials, and this was when I switched. I had been doing 2D work for years. I took a 3 or 4 year break, and then here I am with all these materials, didn't know what to do with them, and I just started to say, I'm gonna just play. Got into my 3-year-old, 5-year-old mind, started tinkering, and I thought I was being silly. But then all of a sudden I have this barnacle cluster atop this mannequin hand, and I'm like, wow, wait a minute, this could be something. So getting playful with your materials, putting seriousness to the side, and those are some of the tactics. But actually putting your hands on your instruments. If you are a writer and just get at the keyboard and just hit one letter, you're starting to move something. The other thing is talk about the block. So in the context of journaling, get on your page, whether it's a screen, it could be a video, it could be writing, and start to talk about what the block feels like and what you want to do. Start writing about what you do know about what you want to create, what you want to feel when you see the work. And you might start to dissolve some of the pieces of the molecules of that blockage might start to move out of the way. But the more you write about it, you might find that you get past the barrier. There was just a little bit of junk and gunk in the way. And when you push it out of the way by just getting acquainted with the block, it's almost as if you say, block, let me introduce myself. My name is Rhonda, and I just want to know, what do you want from me? What are you doing here? And you get acquainted with it and sit with it and get to know it. And you might even discover what it's there for. It might be a fear block. It might be a perfectionist block. It could be that, now this is something that could be happening, and it's the least expected among some artists and creative people, but the block might be that the idea that you really want to see in the world, you don't know enough yet to bring it to fruition, and you're being paused because there's another part of you that's learning something. So sometimes we're slowed down because there's another part of us that's learning. That happened to me. I got slowed down for several years, and I thought, I just had to finally say, you know what, this might not be just a block, because I couldn't make art. I was trying to push myself. And it was after my father passed away. So I thought it was grief, but it wasn't. It was a new Rhonda artist trying to emerge. But it didn't happen overnight. It took years. But during that time, I followed my heart. So that's another thing. Is your heart telling you to do something else, and is your mind trying to fight against it? Sometimes we're blocked because we're supposed to take a new direction, and we're trying to force ourselves in a different route. So when we write, we discover those things. So one thing might be true for you. One person might just realize, oh, I just need to let go of perfectionism and stop taking myself so seriously. The next person might realize, oh, I'm about to transform into a whole new level of artist, and this block was just a way of getting me quiet because I have to learn all these other things. And if you get out of your head and into this more heart space and really listen within, you will feel yourself being pulled to things. And a lot of times we feel pulled to things that are contrary to what we thought our path should be. And a lot of times those things that our heart's pulling us to are actually things to help us get to a higher level on the same path we want to be on. So we got to listen within, and the steps that you feel guided to do might not make any sense, but it will make sense later. So sometimes a block is just a long fallow period, and you don't know. That's the horrible thing. We don't get a heads up. Nobody tells us, hey, you know what? You're going to have this period of time where no ideas are going to come, but be patient. It's going to come back. I had to tell myself, wow, maybe I'm not an artist anymore. And that was pretty scary, but I did it. And art came back. It came back, and I went from 2D to 3D. But all the stuff that's part of my art now, I went deeper into exploring and ended up on the other side being more true to who I always was anyway. So it's like I shed a lot of junk that wasn't true to me. And if you come to the page every day and write about that as whatever endeavor you're interested in, you might peel away bit by bit at what's blocking, what's in the way. And then even if you're not blocked, that's just one side of it. Not everybody who wants to use a journal for creativity, not everybody's blocked. Some people have too many ideas, and the problem is, how do I pick one? And really, it is this litmus test of like Marie Kondo. I haven't really watched her show, but I know she has that concept of sparking joy. So some people have a list of things that they love and that they want to pursue, and they pick the thing that logically makes the most sense, or they pick the thing that's going to make the most money, but it's a head thing and not a heart thing. So I always say go with your heart, because you're going to be more passionate about it. You're going to desire to, you don't have to push yourself to do it. You'll feel pulled to do it. Also, when it comes to journaling and brainstorming, if you do have one particular project. Oh, and the other thing is, sometimes we have too much goal clutter. So you can use your journal to figure out which goals to put on the back burner or to put away for a while. Because sometimes when you feel the pressure of all the many things you want to do, it can create a heaviness. It's like you're carrying all the baggage of everything you want to do, and it makes you feel heavier as you try to do that first thing. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to give myself a break, and I'm going to say, Rhonda, you don't have to do those 50 other things you wanted to do. You can put them in a book and put them on the shelf, write them down, keep those notes. But we're not doing those things. We're going to focus on this one thing, get it in flight, and then maybe you can decide if you want to do something later. But sometimes it's about taking all the heat off, getting rid of the goal clutter, so that you can focus on what's right in front of you. And then when you do have that creative project that's right in front of you, just to get it started, again, I talked about writing about what you want this project to make you feel, what impact you want it to have. Get focused on your why. Why are you doing this? How does it connect to you? And a lot of times the answers for first steps to take, the project will start to take shape as you connect it to your why. What inspires you? Why are you doing this? What impact do you want to have? How do you want it to be received? How do you want to feel when you see the finished product? How do you want to feel during the process? And if you notice that you're more focused on pleasing other people and not yourself, that might be a red flag where you want to say, oh, you know what? Is that really the kind of reason I want to be making work? Do I want to make work too? And I'm not talking about the kind of pleasing where you're helping people and they're benefiting from it. I'm talking about the kind of pleasing where you're seeking validation, outside validation, like, oh, you're a valued person because you do this. I'm not talking about seeking I'm talking about how you want to be careful of doing things in the world because you want to feel validated because of them, rather as opposed to feeling like, oh, this is my purpose. I'm totally driven to do this thing. But the more you write about the why and what you envision, and details start to come into place. So sometimes you have to start with the biggest of the big picture and work your way down to the details. And you might get in a zone, especially if you do free writing, where you might be, and I call it free writing, it's stream of consciousness writing, where you throw out the window all the rules of grammar. You don't care, use the simplest words, don't worry about punctuation or paragraphs or grammar. You just get in the zone and write really freely. And you'll start to notice things from the subconscious coming to the surface, things from your higher self coming through. And that's where the breakthroughs happen. So as you start with the big picture and work your way down to the details, you might be writing fast and you might not even realize an hour has gone by. And you might not even be conscious of everything that's coming through because you're in that mode. And also the big difference here is when you stop worrying about the grammar, punctuation, and paragraphs and the rules of writing, you get out of the left brain and you hand it over to the right brain. And that's where the creativity starts to come in. And sometimes if you notice, if you're the kind of creative person who has to completely clean off your area or clean up before you can do anything creative, sometimes it's about having this freedom and all of this space to work with, but sometimes it's about just giving your left brain something to do so it'll sit and be quiet while you try to go and have your right brain time. So Jessica, was that helpful for the creative journaling? Okay. So in the last couple of minutes, I just want to talk about a couple of journals. And actually, I think I went through all of my notes. I'm going to check the chat for any questions. Make sure I didn't miss anything. But this is a book called The Cosmic Journal by Yannick Silver, and it's handwritten and it's illustrated. So this is a book that has some journaling prompts in it. Like one of these pages says, "Your destiny is calling, decline, accept." And then it just has some comments about destiny and some things that Yannick has written. And then there's some blank lines so that you can write in it. A lot of people buy these books. You might have tons of books on your shelves, whether it's personal growth or art, and they're often these little writing exercises, and I know a lot of people skip those. If you need some journaling prompts, one thing to do would be to go back to some of those books you might have where you skip the writing prompts. And for those who might not be ready to write tons and tons of paragraphs, dot journaling, or someone talked about bullet journaling. That's a type of journaling where people are really just making a lot of lists. So list making could be a great way to break into journaling if you're not used to journaling. Collecting quotes. It doesn't always have to be your words. You can take a scrapbook approach to journaling. And then a book that is an actual journal, Spilling Open by Sabrina Ward Harrison, is it's the art of becoming yourself. So this is literally her journals with her artwork. So she's written by hand, and a lot of this book is available. Tons of people are selling it on eBay, so it's easy to get her book, get your hands on a copy. It's art and handwritten text about her life. So it could be inspiring to look at someone else's journal. And another thing that can kickstart one's journaling is these oracle decks or affirmation decks. And if you're someone who's starting out with trying to build a journaling habit, you might try something like an affirmation deck, like Louise Hay has How to Love Yourself cards or Heart Thoughts cards. So if you're working on self-love or something like that, these might be good. For instance, one of the cards in the Heart Thoughts deck says, "Forgiveness is a gift to myself," on the front. And then the back says, "Forgiving frees me from the past and allows me to live in the present. When I forgive myself and others, I am free." So you might shuffle this deck and see what comes up, or pick a card just by reading all of them, take a card and decide, oh, you know what, I think I'm going to sit and contemplate this card and write about it. So you could use a card in a deck as a prompt. And then there are other decks that might have more business or abundance related, manifesting related content, like Gabrielle Bernstein has The Universe Has Your Back or Super Attractor. And I have some prompts every week in the journaling class. I have a lot of prompts. I'm going to just put these in the chat, and if you like, you can copy and paste those. I'm just going to make sure all of them copy. So what are you thankful for and why? List as many things as you can think of. What brings you joy? Make a list of things big and small. What do you like about yourself? List as many things as you can think of. Take a moment to consider some of your most significant accomplishments. What is it about you, positive traits and abilities that made them possible? That might be a good journaling prompt for someone who's feeling like imposter syndrome, or who's feeling a little bit self-doubtful, and who's feeling that inner critic is a little too loud when they're trying to take a new step forward or climb a new mountain. And that happens to everybody too, by the way. When I teach these classes in person, I'll often ask for a show of hand. Who is dealing with self-doubt, or who's in transition right now? And usually everyone raises their hand. So everyone's dealing with this. People who look like they have it all together are dealing with imposter syndrome every once in a while. So when we're about to take a new step up, often the doubt comes in. And a lot of times, looking back at your past and realizing, wow, I've done bigger things than what I'm about to do now. How did I get through those? And just remembering, making the voice of your past accomplishments and the positive traits that help you accomplish them, making that voice louder than the doubt is something that you could do with an entry like this. And by the same token, this last prompt, how have you made a difference in other people's lives? What is it about you, personal traits, personality traits that, or et cetera, that made those contributions possible? Some people might feel like they might lose sight of the things that they've done. And believe me, when I work with people, so many people I work with forget all the things they've done. And when they're trying to do something big in the future or that's ahead of them. And oftentimes they've done things that were much more daunting and challenging, but they forget them because the fear is so big. And that's why sometimes when we write grants or fill out our resume and don't get the job, sometimes the whole exercise was about you needed to brush up on your self-belief. And so a lot of times we end up going through our careers and doing this whole resume overhaul or writing grant applications. And one of the best things it can do for us is remind us how much good we've done, how much hard work we've done, how much we've achieved. And we get in touch with the parts of us that have made that possible. So we are now at 1:58, almost towards the end. I wonder, is there a quick question? I don't know how much time there is for a question. I might have missed something. But I don't want to end without saying thanks to everyone. Oh, someone wrote, what are the books again? Oh, you know what, you all, I'm going to put my information here.
Typed in 2 of the books, so.
You typed in 2? Okay. So if anyone wants to email me, I'm going to, and I didn't realize that I was only sending my comments to 6018 North. So I'm going to put in my Instagram. My Instagram and my website contact. So you can email me through the contact page on my website if you have any questions that we didn't cover today. And I do my best to answer emails or to respond when people write after a workshop. So the hour is short, but I don't like to cut people off, so we can stay in touch and I'll follow you back. And thank you so much, everyone, for showing up and being here today. I truly appreciate it. It's lovely to see the faces that I can see, wonderful to see the names. So yes, and let's stay in touch. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thanks, Trisha, and thank you, Nathan. And I'm doing another one on the 26th, and I think I might do a manifesting workshop on the 26th with 6018 North, if that's something you all would be interested in.
Yes, we need manifestation in this world.
Yes.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Yes.
You're always a pleasure.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thanks, everybody. You all have a great rest of your week. Bye.
You too.
Thank you, everyone who joined. See you next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. Bye, everybody. Stay safe.